So here we are at the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroads Museum, and my name is Jeff Ellingson. I am the museum curator here at the museum, and one thing that I would like to visit with you a little bit about this morning is that this museum is full of amazing exhibits, and each one has a story, and this morning we're going to talk about the Telegraph. Now we happen to have an operating telegraph right here, and I'm going to show you how it works. And I also want to tell you just briefly who Samuel Morse was, and that this technology that he gave to the world literally changed it. This took place 176 years ago, which really isn't that long ago. But imagine this, before then, in 1844, the quickest way to get a message from one place to the next was to ride a horse as fast as you could. Now, you guys have probably heard of the Pony Express, and you could get a message from one place to another. You could go about 30 miles in a day. Not very fast. It took a long time. And Samuel Morse, we all know him as the father of Morse code. Well, he was actually a very good portrait artist. And this invention came about because he had a broken heart. He was doing a painting of a famous U.S. general called Lafayette in Washington, D.C., when he got word that his wife had taken ill. And so he rushed home, but it wasn't very fast. He had to travel hundreds of miles, and by the time he got home to be by her side, she had already died and was buried, and it was extremely tragic. So that happened. That was just the way of it back then. Information did not travel very quickly, and so this invention changed the entire world. What this is fairly simple. It is an electromagnet, and by causing breaks in the current, you can have dots and dashes, and he invented a language to go with this. And when this was implemented in 1844, people could talk to each other, and it traveled through a wire at the speed of light. And this is what it sounded like. Now, this invention allowed people to communicate over long distances, as I mentioned. Now, imagine telling time. Now, everybody had a big fancy clock up on the wall, but were those clocks in sync with each other? No, there was no way to tell if the person down the street, if their clock said the same as yours, unless you went down there and talked to them. Now, if that clock is farther than 20 miles away, there was no way to synchronize time. Now, railroads at the time were picking up speed in this country, and they were spreading all over the country. And if you can't tell time, then it is very scary, especially when there's two trains traveling at each other on the same track, and if you don't know what time it is, you could have a huge yard sale. And quite often, there were head-on collisions because of that. When this came out in 1844, it allowed the dispatcher to get on the straight key in the morning and talk to everybody down the line, and every clock on the railroad would be synchronized exactly. And so safety for railroads greatly increased with this invention. Now, we don't give our ancestors enough credit. To me, when I hear this, I just hear clicking sounds. And I can't tell where one word ends and the other begins. But these telegraphers, as they were known, they heard words. They literally spoke this language of dots and dashes, and they did it so well that they could tell who was working at the different stations just by the way they sent the message, which to me it's mind-boggling. But anyway, these telegraphers had to understand 25 words a minute just to keep their jobs, which is pretty incredible to me. We've slowed this down. Our little example of the telegraph here is actually a combination of technologies. We have built a computer and hooked it to a keyboard, and this computer operates the 19th century telegraph keys. And so you can actually hear exactly how it sounded in a railroad station, and we've slowed it down to just 15 words a minute. But keep in mind that back in the day, when you were a telegrapher, you had to know 25 words a minute. So what we've done here is we've pre-programmed some messages. And so when you hit this number pad here, it's gonna bring up a message, and you'll be able to read it in that blue screen, since not everybody these days understands telegraphy. So anyway, what you can also do when you come to the museum, you can come in here and type a message, and you'll be able to read it in the screen. And we have another station just 50 feet away from here, where you can hear the message coming in. And that's kind of the fun thing in the museum here, is we have these two stations that the Telegraph is actually hooked up. So anyway, this technology was the beginning of the information age. And the end result of, in 176 years, you went from this to this. This is wireless. This has all the information of the entire Earth at your fingertips. You guys take that for granted. Back then, this was just as much of a miracle to science and to mankind as this is. And it changed us. It changed us dramatically. And so this is a great exhibit. It has a great story. And I encourage you all to come down here and check it out, and we'll show you how it works.